So just to get some perspective here, visited a small manufacturer up in Anacortes in my district, and they make a variety of components for smaller airplanes, including things called vortex generators, which I'm sure Mr. Hanna knows all about, since he flies smaller airplanes. But, you know, smallest one no longer than probably my thumbnail, and that has to get certified because it goes on the airplane. So for some perspective, except for the airplane itself on delivery, how many individual parts and components in a 737 approximately have to have a FAA stamp, metaphorical stamp?
I mean, I don't know. Every single, well, that's, I mean, every one.
Every single piece.
Look, we go through a certification process of not only the production system, which includes the supply chain, but every part ultimately that's part of a design, because the FAA certifies our design, and every single part then has to be certified.
So when you talk about the existing planes as well as the future planes that you're going to be designing and building,
yeah,
each of those come with the same or a different production process?
It could, depending on what we do with technology. Yeah.
And so the process itself as well needs to be,
yes,
if it's a new process, it needs to go through a certification,
yes,
as well.
Yes, yes.
So we're not just talking about parts and components.
No.
We're talking about not what you make only,
what's
but
the
how you
production
make
system? When I talk about the production system, are the quality inspections appropriate? Have you followed the intent of the planning documents and the engineering intent of what we put into the design? Those are all the same things that are part of the certification process.
Yeah. So so it's not, again, it's not just the what you make, but it's the how you make process, yes, as well. So in terms of on the how you make side of the production process, how much of that is currently an ODA related, and how much?
Well, we do an awful lot of that work ourselves, and then the FAA comes in and certifies our production system, and they do audits to verify those types of things, and we do audits ourselves, and it's a constant. It's kind of the production system is constantly being evaluated and audited.
Yeah, and in terms of the FAA inspectors who come in and do the auditing, you discussed as your second point the necessity of training an FAA workforce. Do you have an estimate of what numbers of people? Do you have an estimate of how to train? What FAA ought to be training in?
Well, I think the one place I would want to emphasize is the systems engineering piece of this thing is being a very critical part to start to move towards, as opposed to detailed design type of activity. That's where we can be very helpful in that respect, because we have the detailed design capability and analysis and those kinds of things, where they can become at a higher level and be looking at it more from a systems approach to that. Systems engineering, I think, is one of the areas that will be an important piece of the workforce training for the FAA.
Yeah, and you talked about the supply chain as well, which is extensive for
yes,
you and your
yeah,
main competitor.
Correct.
Throughout the country, throughout the world. How is that managed through ODA, and are there any changes that need to take place, or is that all you don't deal with that part?
No, we deal with that part as well. We go in and we establish the production system. The FAA comes in and which includes our supply base, and they come in and validate that as well through their audit process.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. Mr. Hilkeman, you mentioned that at least it's been your experience, I guess, that for the ODA that you haven't had many, I don't know how you described it, many problems with inconsistent interpretation, perhaps, at least in your region. Is that right? Is that what I heard you say?
Implementation and use of the ODA has worked well for us in our region.
Okay. Do you have concerns, or how should we address concerns that we hear about inconsistencies region by region?
Well, the inconsistencies have been more on the repair station interpretations as you get new inspectors and additional inspectors. I think if you look at the ODA, the more responsibilities, the more things that the ODA can do, because some ODAs are very limited.
Yeah.
The more things that the ODAs can train themselves, add staff to, and develop, in effect, you're decreasing that 1,000, requirement jobs that you talked about that the FAA would need, or you make the resources available for those small companies that was suggested is out there, or concern for the smaller companies. So I think, if we can get all the ODAs operating at the highest level possible, and additional delegation, in effect, that reduces the need for additional inspectors and creates capacity for the rest of the system.
All right, good. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.